Welcome back to Let's Get Real. In part one, Eileen shared what it was really like to be in the NFL world, the pressure, the performance, and the parts that nobody talks about. In part two, we go deeper into identity, healing, and what it took for her to find her voice again on the other side. Let's get into it. There's this turning point in your journey where everything shifted once again, and this time it was unexpectedly and painfully in your marriage. You went through some really deeply personal and spiritual battles. Can you share a little bit more about what that season was like?
Yeah, so that season came about, 2009 was when I was done with football. About 5 years later, that transition started happening. And I would say a lot had to do with the birth of our one and only daughter. So that was in 2014. And I say, it's like it's such a hard thing to talk about because the birth of our daughter was so beautiful and the best thing to have her. But it also, God used that to kind of bring to the surface a lot of things that I didn't even realize with my ex. He literally said that he had a fear of women. And there was dynamic. I mean, it goes back to, we all have childhood things. Yeah. And so there was things that were unresolved that didn't really show up in our marriage because I was the submissive wife. I'm pretty laid back. I didn't like to ruffle feathers. And that was just like part of my personality. And, he would say, he would kind of say things like, I would get a random call from like Home Depot or some waitress. And she'd say, hey, your ex, Kabir's here. He says that he's the head of the home. Is that true? And I'd go, yeah. And so he would have these conversations where he would talk about headship and, that he's the leader, that he calls the shots. But in my mind, I mean, it's true, but it's, there's mutual submission. But I wasn't going to get all this on a conversation with anybody that called me. It was just like, yeah, he's the head. and I just left that conversation between him and whoever it was. But, after she was born and, in a nutshell, he found this teaching that was saying that women aren't created in the image of God, that our identity, like I said, is our obedience to our husband, cooking, cleaning, having babies. Basically, we couldn't have babies, and kind of like what you have to offer. And your salvation was contingent on your obedience to your spouse. So that whole identity thing, I mean, that rocked me to my core. The thing that sounded so absurd when I first heard it, you're not creating the image of God, right? For that, in its absurdity, for that to eventually come to the point where I questioned that, Lord, am I your daughter? Lord, do you hear me? I mean, that for sure was just, it's the spirit of confusion and the spirit of fear. Looking back now, if I name those things, those are the things that came in through my, just with my daughter being born. It was things that came to the surface that we had to deal with, and we didn't know how to deal with it. And so that's really kind of what happened, this religious teaching that basically took us off course of our Christian biblical marriage. So polygamy was okay if you wore makeup, like you were a Jezebel. So he wanted it. All these women, they wear head covers, no makeup, t-shirt, long skirts. That's it. You call your husband Lord, you call him Master. Completely different.
I had, known.
Oh, yes. Oh my gosh. It's a shock because it's like this sudden shift. I think what's so confusing is when it's cloaked under the guise of Christianity still, because it's so unfortunate that this happens far more often than we even think. And you are someone who could attest to that from the different women whose spouses have fallen into cults like that. And it's so unfortunate, and it's just the most confusing thing and disheartening thing. Like I'm just thinking, like, when you're surrounded by people who are also believing those messages and you're the only one to be questioning it, like, I don't know if I were in that situation, if I would have the mental capacity and the strength to be able to discern enough to get out. Like, I don't know if I would. So I'm that has been part of your story that I've been like so blown away by, because of being willing to be on your own and basically cast into exile, right? Like there's people are like, hey, fine, then you're gone. Like you don't get to stay here. And that takes so much courage and strength. So I'm wondering what helped you stay anchored when your world felt like it was just turned upside down, like during all of that?
Yeah. I mean, a couple things for sure. One, community. For 3 or 4 years, I had kept quiet. So like you, it was just me actually facilitating this program called Life Skills, where I as I'm teaching it, I was seeing, whoa, these things are happening to me right now. How the heck do I deal with that? And so keeping this strong face, trying to help everybody out, I finally had to get to this place of, going to my closest friends and saying, like, I'm struggling. Like, this is where our marriage is going. And so community was huge. And God, not only that community of people I knew, but God was just so faithful to bring people that didn't know me, that God just used prophetically to speak like life. And I heard softly. I mean, I don't take credit for when you said it takes courage. I mean, at those points, I remember just wanting to die. Like, God, what the heck is going on? And God used different people to say, Ellie, you are strong. You're a mighty woman of valor. I mean, there was just things where he would tell me through the people, and I felt like Gideon, like, no way, there's no way. But in that process, prayer was huge, like truly disciplined prayer. I would be on my knees at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'd be praying in the Spirit. I would have my journal there. And so, I mean, I had to take big time measures to do things differently. And I call it soldier mode. It's just like, Lord, I'm like, this is solely about just hearing you, obeying you. I can cry out to you and I can give you my emotions, but it's not about how I feel. I need to take care of these kids. I mean, so there was, it was just a different place. So those things anchored me. And during that time of prayer, as I was crying out to him, he kept just pouring in me who I was. Like, I believed him for who he said he was, but he started saying, okay, like, this is who you are. This is who you are to me. So that was a really big shift for me. It was stepping into who he had already seen me to be, stepping into that woman of strength and woman of valor that people were, like sharing with me.
Wow. Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's so good, because to get to hear from God himself, to speak and remind you, like, this is who you are. And in your book, one of the chapters is you say, and I love that has been so core to your relationship with God. And I would imagine, like, here, I would think, and you can, correct me if I'm wrong, I would think that that's also where that would apply. Like, okay, God, you're telling me all these things. Okay, then you say this and you say this, and this is so, like, that process of like actually believing him more than the people, and what they're preaching in the cult. Like, oh my gosh, it's like a pathway forward. He's like leading you out and showing you, this is what I have called you to. This is who I've called you to. And the other part that you brought up that I think is underestimated, but so big, is community. So big. And I'm so glad you shared about that, because these are things I've wondered. I'm like, Eileen, how did you get out? Like, how did you not get sucked in and stay there really for the rest of your life? Like, I'm blown away. And that piece of community, because the biggest tactic of the enemy is isolation. I mean, that's where he can, like, lies just fester and breed, and then we get stuck and trapped in these really unhealthy, toxic situations. And so, because I can think of for myself, that's a huge part of like where I've stayed stuck. And it's been in these times over the past several years, like when God has led me to community and people, especially in really difficult situations where I'm in a lot of conflict, I'm having to confront a lot. I've looked back, I'm like, it's because of God and community. Because I've tried before to do this just me and God and nobody else and staying in isolation. And I couldn't stand. Like I kept falling into this. So I love that you were able to touch on that too and just share how important community was for you.
Yeah, for sure. I think about that scripture. It says, confess your sins to one another. And sin's not just like, oh, I did this wrong, but it's like confess your issues. Like have an outlet to talk to. And it says, confess your sins to one another that you may be healed. I mean, that's such a big part of it. So when we keep it to ourselves, we don't expose the lies that are going on. We don't, we can be so in our head that like we just need reality checks, from friends, from, just different things. But that is such a huge part that's where healing begins, is finally letting it out.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That is like one of my favorite verses that I come back to. I'm so glad that you brought that up because it's true. It's like if we want to heal from anything that's harmed us or wounds or anything, like we have to include other people. It's a requirement. Like that's the way God wired us. That's the way he made it. And it can be so difficult to do that. So, and that's also why like this is one of the reasons that I wanted to start this podcast, was to be able to have a place to have honest conversations, because that is the opportunity for healing and having that. But it's unfortunate that too often it doesn't happen. And so, thank you for sharing that. And you kind of mentioned this a little bit ago, but if you wanted to share any more on what stepping forward from that season required of you, I would love to hear more of that.
It required me to walk away. I mean, gosh, like I know that there was that time where, again, there's the fine line too of community and well-intended people, whether pastors, school principals, even my friends, where, my friends, obviously they knew what was going on, but in fear and in love, they're like, I mean, you gotta get out, you gotta leave. And I'm like, I am not leaving. That same thing, I'm not leaving unless I hear from God. So I have my friends telling me to get out. And then when I did finally hear from God, God totally made it clear, and we actually had to have an escape plan, to walk away, to step away, hoping that he would come back around. That was what those measures were for, because he wanted to take us to the cult. I knew it was going to be a dangerous situation. I had already heard that they were going to lay hands on me to pray the Jezebel spirit out of me. And so I knew that if we were going to take off and go to this place, we would be in the devil's playground. And I just couldn't put myself in that situation, couldn't put my kids in that situation. So, here we had that escape plan. And, it's like, I had to, really anchor in, like, God, what are you saying? Well, as we're away, then I'm getting calls from our pastor and, the principal, you need to go back home. And so, and them not knowing the situation. So it's like going, Lord, like, what do you say? Like, I have to hear your voice more than anything. And so it took courage to just, to just know that even if it was just me and God, you're telling me these things, and it's like I have to have the courage to just hear your voice, because especially when you hear from men, from your pastor.
Oh, you feel like, okay, well, I got to do this,
and I really had to just be quiet, to courage to be quiet, to courage not to defend myself or explain myself. And it took courage to really just trust God, and God saying, Eileen, I'm your defense. And there were many times where I wanted to be like, Lord, I didn't do that. I want to defend myself, whether it's to the cult, because there was videos out on me, there was Facebook posts. There were times where I just wanted to say, God, I don't want to fight, but that's not me. I'm not the gold digger. I'm not, there was just so many things out there that I'm wrecking my home, that I was the gold digger, that I never loved my ex, all those things. I wanted to be able to defend myself. And God said, no, I'm your defense. And so it took courage to just sit still and just let things kind of play out. So I don't know. Yes. It's weird. I love your questions, because these questions aren't asked very often, where you're getting really like deeper. And I can say, hey, these are the things that happen. But when you're asking me more of like, what did I think, or how did I feel, or how did it's different. So I love it. And I'm hoping kind of explaining it, in a way that people understand. So.
Oh my gosh, yes, because I feel like, I mean, just thinking of like how at the core it's like we're feeling beings, and it's in those big emotions like fear. Fear is one that people who are just toxic and can be corrupt, they use that as a huge manipulator to control and assert their power over people, right? So like I'm just thinking of women who find themselves in a similar situation, and so much of it is like they're just bombarded and bullied by fear or other really big emotions of fear of the unknown or what's going to happen, and losing so much. And my thoughts are like, if I were in that situation, like I need to hear from someone what the experience was like what you wrestled with and what it took to like get out of that. And so I'm just so grateful for you being willing to share so honestly, because if someone's in that, it's like, hey, what was going on at that time? And because I'm thinking like with your pastor, and I know for me, it's been so challenging to not put someone like a pastor on a pedestal where it's like, that's actually God's rightful place. Like, it's so easy to say, well, they have the final authority because they're in that position of authority, instead of being like, no, they can share that, and it can actually completely contradict what God says I'm to do in this. And my allegiance is first, it's ultimately to God, but it's so hard when you're in a situation like that.
Yeah, super hard. I mean, because all day long you can get encouragement from your girlfriends, and just the fine line of what I'm like, gosh, am I doing everything like that I should be doing? I wanted, that was my heart. I knew getting married, God taught me about submission. I wanted to be a loving, submissive wife. I felt like I was. And so to hear all these things about how rebellious I was, or how I wasn't, submissive, and then to hear that that's how I was being portrayed, like when I said we escaped, I was seen as rebellious, and emotionally unstable. So yes, I had to very much keep quiet and all that, and to keep my trust in God. God knows us too. He knows what I needed. He knew that I needed, he knew that I needed clarity. One, biblical clarity, but two, those same people ended up coming back. I remember getting a call from my pastor, and he says, you know what? I mean, you have been hearing from Holy Spirit. He's like, I'm sorry. He's like, I didn't realize the danger and the depth of what you were going to until the Holy Spirit told him. And so that meant a lot to me, because I'm walking in obedience and trust in God, but going, God, I don't, there's just those like little places like, is this right? God, I don't know. I don't know. I'm just walking like day to day.
Yes.
And so, so he
gave me what I needed to just feel like, just a reassurance.
Oh my gosh. Yes. It's huge, because that clarity is so key, especially when you're being bombarded with messages that are opposite of that, which cause the confusion. And when you're wrapped up in this cloud, it's like, I need you to part the clouds, shine some light on the path that you're wanting me to go down, and get the clarity and the guidance. Like, what's the next step you want me to do? And it just sounds like you stayed that close to him to just follow his lead, like a step at a time, like, which, I mean, otherwise it'd be just so overwhelming to see the whole plan laid out. I just keep coming back to like how brave and how courageous you are. And like, you are this mighty woman of valor. And I love to like what you have, the program that you've created, and just Lady Bellator. It's like, you have lived it. You have lived that. And that is something that it is a calling, and that is something God's calling other women to. And you get to lead the way in that, and just share from what you've experienced. It's so big. I want to talk a little bit more about where you are today. Your book is titled Sidelined No More. What does that mean to you now after everything that you've been through?
Gosh, you know what? God has used that term to mean so many different things in so many different ways. So like when I wrote that book, for me at that time was like I'm no longer sidelined in that marriage, you know, just being like shut in. Very biblical, like, okay, I am not just made for cooking, cleaning. It doesn't mean, you know, just about obeying your husband. That was that moment. I mean, you could look at it from the professional athlete world where it's us women dropping everything. And it's not the gold digging women, it's these beautiful, smart, independent women who've laid everything aside to honor their husbands, to honor God and say, okay, I'm going to be the wife and the helper that you called me to be first. So there's that part of being sidelined. God has showed me to this point where sidelined no more means, Eileen, there's still a lot of healing that needs to take place in you. And in that healing and in those struggles, I mean, second marriage, super difficult, very challenging, especially after all the wounds of the first one. So God has been like just peeling layers of wounds I didn't know I had. And so the biggest part of being sidelined no more, that term in this season of my life is realizing that I had been waiting on other people, whether like my husband now, like there's things where I'll think in my mind, God, he needs to work on that. And, you know, like our marriage is not going to get better until he does this. And God was showing me, no, you work on you. I mean, these are a whole lot of things. Like basically all this healing came to me in different things that I had done this past year, different retreats, different healing, different breakthrough, different deliverance, where he showed me your healing is changing him. Your healing is making, you know, your marriage completely different. Your showing up differently is causing him to show up differently. So it made me realize, oh my gosh, here I'm being sidelined and playing victim and thinking that things aren't going to get better until someone else does something. And so God was saying, Eileen, you work on you work on me, you still focus on me and help and let me change you. And you're going to see that you aren't, you know, you don't have to be sidelined and thinking that things are only going to get better when outside circumstances get better. So that has been like a big part of, you know, the sideline piece. So it's definitely showing up differently.
Yes, gosh, it's so good. And again, it's helpful to hear because I very much relate to that. And I mean, I'm thinking of how, like from my schooling and when I was getting my master's in marriage and family therapy, I remember one of the core aspects that they taught was it only takes one person to change a whole system. That's it. Like it takes one person to change the entire relationship. Like the dynamic can't play out just from one person changing. And because that's something that I have found too. Like I feel like entering in when I got into the NFL world, like you said, there's so much like pushed to the back burner, so many things of my dreams, my desire, like even wanting to go to school, I wanted to do that right away. And that got pushed several years. So just to be able to step in because your entire life revolves around this career. I mean, you open up your eyes and you look around, it's based on their career. And so what I found is how it was very easy for that to become a way of life. Like, and that's this picture of like we'd go sit up in the stands on Sundays, but in my life, in the day to day, I was sitting in the stands and I wasn't getting in the game. I wasn't risking. It became very comfortable to be in the background and to be behind the scenes because he was in the spotlight. And it's been such a challenge as God has called me forward. And he's been like, hey, like I want you to get back in the game of life. And that posture of like sitting and waiting, I feel like that's a huge theme in this. It's always like sit and wait, like not being able to commit to events or things that would come up because we didn't know. It's always never knowing. Like, I don't know, is he going to get injured? I don't know, when is he going to get a tryout? I don't know what the next project's going to be. And so I too have had to really work on that like kind of victim mentality, if you will, of realizing how much I've continued to be in that posture of just sit and wait for somebody else, when God's like, I'm actually calling you to do something yourself that can create some of this change and not just wait for someone else to do it.
Yeah.
Where do you see women today hiding or performing instead of living freely?
You know, I, and this is just me, you know, just based off of what I've experienced, what I've seen, but I think it goes in those two ways that I had described. It's hiding in the zone, the comfort zone of I'm mom and wife, you know, like, I don't know, there's something about it. When you say that, I literally just think of me with the breast, you know, the breast feeding just cover.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm covering them, but I'm covering me. Like my way of saying, hey, I can't talk right now. You know, I need privacy. And so it's the symbolism of, you know, if I just stay in this comfort of what's familiar, me taking care of the kids, like God knows this is my role. And then on the other extreme, I see that they hide, from what I can tell. There's a thing of just hiding behind this appearance that all is great and well, and look what I'm doing. Like I'm doing something too, and I don't want to knock anybody because there's women that are doing great things out there. I just think that it's important for us to be real, and you know, also to just kind of, and that's what you and I feel like are doing. We want to represent those, whether Christian or not, but I do feel like it's the Christian woman. I think there's a responsibility for us to know, hey, I'm an ambassador for God first. I represent God first. How do I do that? What does she look like? And so I think that we have those like that guidance, where for me it was, okay, well, I want to represent you well. So it means that I have to, my appearance has to be, you know, upheld and classy. I'm not going to show all these body parts. I want my, you know, my words to represent you. So I don't know. I feel like I held myself in a different standard just because of being a Christian. But I don't know. I just feel like there's this thing of, with social media, it's just easy to just make it look like everything is well. And I think that it's not, I think it's, you find yourself in that. It's not like some people are trying to do it, but I just know like it's just the way of the NFL or the way of the pro athlete world, where you're kind of like led, like very like unconsciously, you know, that's just what you're supposed to do, you know, it's just to have it all together. So it's not like, I don't think that we're going, hey, look at me, like I want to impress people. There is, if you want to call it, like you call it that pressure, that's how you're supposed to look. That's just, you're walking into that way. So yeah, I think that's kind of what's going on.
Yeah, gosh, that's so good and so well said too, because yeah, I think it's really accurate in what you're describing, and it is very unconscious in the way that we do hide. And what really stood out to me was what you're talking about with performing, because even thinking of what's very obvious and overt is in any pro sport, it's all about performance. They get paid based on performance. They are going to stay on the team based on performance. So then it's really easy to get caught up in performance as the wife. And then you start to believe my worth is based on how much I do. My worth it's always based on performance. And then we lose touch with feeling like I will still be accepted. I will maintain belonging. If I'm not performing, like, who am I and who will stick around? Mm-hmm. Right. And so it's just, I think it's that shell and this kind of, I don't know, like these kind of armor pieces that we put up that really hide who we are, but then we start to not recognize ourselves because we're caught up in the performance. So I really love that you touched on that. And gosh, it's so good, Eileen, so good. Well, the last question that I want to ask you today before we end is, and what does living unsidelined look like for you today?
Living unsidelined is me living in healing and freedom for sure. So that's the thing that God has given me. So I'm seeing how much more that I am healed, how I walk in healing. It is at least a freedom, and I bring that up because I was just thinking, just the last couple of days, how how we want to avoid pain. We just want to avoid it, and we want to, whatever it is. I mean, I can think of so many things where it's like, oh, this issue is here, whether it's a dirty house or it's bills or it's feelings. It's, that's messy. I don't want to deal with that right now. And you keep on going, and you forget that it's even there. And then it's all of a sudden this bigger problem. And so God is showing me, hey, let's deal with this mess. I know it's hard. I know it's painful. But when we deal with this mess, oh my gosh, the peace and the freedom and the joy and the uncluttering that comes from that, it's worth it. Even child labor, like that's I mean, there's something about, the ring of fire. That's a very, very much a thing that God has given me, that you push through the pain to get through to that reward. And so that is so much of what unsidelined life, looks for me. It's me having the balance, like God constantly showing me the balance, and or juggling, because there's not ever true balance, but it's in all the seasons, knowing I am to keep God first. I need to seek Him first, knowing that all things will be added. So, it is being His daughter, His representative. It's being wife. It's being mom. Then everything else. And so I've had it, like, as summer happens, I'm on this roll trying to, one chapter, I'm doing my Proverbs 31 devotional, doing one chapter a week, on a roll, doing the podcast, doing all these things. And all of a sudden, summer hits, and I've got all the kids, like, all the time. And I've got ones that don't live here anymore and that are here for the summer. And it's me going, you know what? All this stuff, other stuff, all this work stuff, I'm putting to the side. I'm doing when I can. It's definitely not the same rhythm as before, but I'm going to enjoy this time, because I could riddle myself with guilt the other way. Like, oh, I'm supposed to listen to this. I'm supposed to write this chapter, and then not be present for my kids.
Yes.
So God is showing me, Eileen, you trust me in this. You just stay close to me and enjoy your family. Like, He's been very much doing it's like here, I thought it was like, I knew a couple weeks ago He was saying clean house. No, a month ago, clean house. And it's like, okay, clean, like, not just clean the house. I knew it was something significant, but more so in a month's time, I'm like, oh, not only unclutter, not only get organized, there's a whole lot of other things, like to uproot and purge and clean, because He's saying, Eileen, I have blessings in store for you that I can't give you now until you clean this other stuff up, until you get rid of these things. And I'm talking my marriage, my husband, like, things that he has to get done. Like, there are things that we need to get rid of so that we can make room for those blessings, because He's not going to give us any more than we can handle. So here I want all these things. I want all this work. I want, to be, whether, speaking more or doing more with these pro-athlete wives and all these other women. Well, if I don't keep my house in order, spiritually, if I don't do that, then I don't want to get to that place where He's given me all these other things that I want, and I break down, I can't handle it, or, something gets, caught up on the wayside that I should have taken care of. So God is like, I felt like He's slowing me down, cleaning things up, allowing me to enjoy my family, and literally just in there's a waiting season for me right now, where I'm just trusting in what I don't see, knowing that He's preparing me for it.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's so good, Eileen, because what I'm hearing you say, it's like being willing to engage with God in the areas of your life, in any area of your life, especially the ones that you may feel hesitant to lean into, because I know from personal experience, this has been so many years of being like, no, that's going to hurt. That's too painful. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to look at it. I don't want to deal with it. It's scary. And those are the areas that have actually kept me sidelined by not engaging and not facing it, not dealing with it. And it can look so different. And I think so much of what you're talking about, it's like, yeah, there's some visible, tangible aspects like work, right? If it's speaking or podcasting, writing books. But then there's a lot of the intangible areas that we're to engage in, whether it's with our marriage, our kids, just learning how to be more present or anything like that. So, yeah, thank you. That is so good. Well, Eileen, I cannot thank you enough for this conversation and just for being willing to share your heart and your story so honestly, because I know that is going to help so many women who find themselves in these similar situations. Before we go, can you just share where people can find you and connect with you?
Yeah, you can find me at ladybellator.com. The pod, so LADYBELLATOR. So real quick, Bellator, it means warrior in Latin. So Lady Bellator is, the lady piece is that she's royalty. So it's knowing our authority in Christ. So it's our identity in Christ in that way, as we're authority and we're daughters of God. And then Bellator is being that tough, strong, resilient, contending person for your marriage, praying for your spouse, praying for your kids, for us, not just me, but I know that I have a calling. I know that it's not as hard as it gets, and as much as the devil wants to like make me doubt, I know that I'm called to serve women and encourage women and strengthen them. So it's like I'm a contender and a fighter for them too. So and so are you, and that's what we want to do, is raise up women. So ladybellator.com. My podcast is The Unsidelined Life. I'm actually taking a month break for the first time, but we'll start up again in August. And then, all the platforms, Eileen Noyes is my name. You can catch me on Facebook, Instagram. As I'm older and like realizing that Facebook is not as much of a thing. So we're working on all those media outlets, but so my podcast, YouTube, Spotify, all those things. So
yes, I'll put all of those in the show notes too, so it's easy for people to find you. So thank you.
Yeah,
thank you so much, Eileen. If this episode hit home for you, please share it with someone who's walking through a similar season. You just never know how much you might need it. Thank you so much for being here, friend. I just cannot wait to talk to you next time. Thanks for listening to Let's Get Real. If something from today's episode resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a conversation. Until next time, remember that in order to heal, we have to get real. Talk to you soon, friend.